Hello, and welcome to this introduction to understanding social inequality. My name is Nigel Kettley, and I teach sociology and education studies here at the Institute. What I'd like to do in this session is explore the meaning and forms of inequality in contemporary Britain. In particular, I'd like to talk about Weber's concept of life chances, the issue of social class, and the measurement of social mobility. I'd like to do this so we can reflect on how equal or unequal is Britain as a society, and how might we come to a conclusion with respect to that question. Social inequality refers to the unequal distribution of opportunities, resources, and outcomes between people in society. And it's a concept, an idea that we're all quite familiar with. So we're all aware of gender and ethnic inequality, for example, in terms of pay. We know that women on average earn less than men, and some ethnic minority groups earn less than the ethnic majority. These pay gaps are currently monitored by the UK government through the Equalities Office, and the government is trying to take steps to change pay inequality. However, the main form of inequality in modern Britain is social class. And by class, I'm referring to groups of people organised in terms of the jobs they do. The government and others classify jobs in terms of their level of skill, level of training, level of responsibility. And we all have a common sense understanding of what social class means. In everyday use, we refer to the working class, the middle class. It's important to remember, of course, that gender, ethnic, and social class inequality intersect, and people face multiple advantages and disadvantages in life. A way we can begin to illustrate the issue of social inequality is talking about life chances. Many people, when they think of sociology, immediately think of the writings of Karl Marx, radical sociology. However, contemporary approaches to social class in sociology owe much more to the liberal democratic thinking of Max Weber. And one of Weber's central concepts when he was talking about social class was the idea of life chances. Life chances really refer to a person's probability of obtaining desirable goods and resources in society, a good salary, a good home, living a long time. And by life chances, Weber was identifying the link between your social class background and having good life chances. Doing well is linked or correlated to an advantaged social background. Recently, as we face the coronavirus pandemic, we've seen, for example, endless media speculation and conversations about the disadvantages faced by working class pupils at home, not having access to technology to assist their learning, and concerns that this will exacerbate educational inequality. Many people, when I talk about social class, immediately think of it as a dry, dead subject. It's not interesting. It's not fascinating. But for me as a sociologist, the key point to remember is that throughout our life course, our life chances are influenced by the class that we were born into. The material resources of your family influence the type of school you attend. They influence your opportunities to move into higher education and to enter a well-paid professional job in the labour market. In turn, your job in the labour market will influence the type of house you live in, the leisure activities you undertake, your participation in politics, and even your health. So patterns of mortality and morbidity are linked to your class of origin, so that people born into the working class on average have poorer health outcomes than those born into the middle class. Importantly, however, I'm not saying that we're all just puppets on socioeconomic strings where society determines what we experience. Rather, our individual behavior can influence the development of our life through the process of social mobility. Mobility basically refers to the movement of individuals or families up or down the social class structure. It's movement. It's measured in sociology in lots of different ways, intragenerationally or intergenerationally, within your own occupational lifetime or by comparison to your parents. But however we measure it, it is primarily caused by education. We get a good education, we enter a higher position in the labour market, for example, compared to our parents. The study of mobility is particularly important because it tells us how open and how socially just British society is. And occasionally people will say to me, what's the point of sociology? What influence does it have? But since the time of the new Labour government, the Social Mobility Commission in England has been responsible for monitoring rates of social mobility and promoting progress towards improved rates of social mobility in the United Kingdom. So the sociological message of opportunity and advancing opportunity has been picked up by successive governments. And what I'd like to do briefly is look at some findings of a Social Mobility Commission report, State of the Nation, 2018-2019. If we take a look at figure 1.1, figure 1.1 actually shows us the percentage of people in different occupations in the United Kingdom. And we can see that today, about 45% of all jobs are professional, higher paid, higher skilled jobs. And the proportion of professional jobs has been increasing. The number of manual jobs or working class jobs has been relatively stable over the last 2 decades, whereas there's been a decline in intermediate jobs, such as clerical occupation. The important thing, of course, is to realize who fills these jobs. And figure 1.2 actually looks at the percentage of people in professional jobs according to their social class background. That is their background of origin. And we can see in figure 1.2 that despite the growth in professional occupations, most of these top jobs actually go to people from professional and intermediate backgrounds. So for example, just 34% of people from working class backgrounds work in professional jobs, compared to 60% of people who were born into professional backgrounds. And the interesting thing from figure 1.2 is that there's been relatively little change in these rates of who fills top jobs over the last 6, 7, 8 years. Moving on, if we look at those people who actually fill working class occupations, the picture is reversed. People from working class backgrounds are still, according to the Social Mobility Commission, more than twice as likely as those from professional backgrounds to end up in working class jobs. So for example, 35% of people from working class backgrounds remain in the same social class as their parents, whereas only 16% of people from professional backgrounds end up in working class jobs. Now, I think the message from this Social Mobility Commission report is relatively clear. The Social Mobility Commission conclude that social mobility has seen very little improvement in recent decades. And indeed, these findings actually align with the broader sociological evidence. Sociologists have been studying mobility since the 1950s, and they have concluded that whilst the absolute rate of mobility is increased, the number of people moving up and down the class structure has increased, your relative chances of moving in terms of which class you were born into have changed little in the second half of the 20th century. So if we examine both official evidence and the sociological evidence, we can conclude that contemporary Britain is not becoming more socially just. It is a relatively immobile society, certainly in terms of relative chances of mobility success. If you're interested in developing an understanding of social inequality, why don't you think about joining us at ICE? We're opening a new certificate in sociology and a new certificate in politics in 2021. And one of the core issues we will be addressing in these courses is patterns of social inequality, social justice, and the nature of contemporary Britain in terms of equality of opportunity.